Welcome. It's nice to have some of you here to see our webinar on the Voices of Kitsap County, the perspectives of 4 Latinxes. We will start in a few minutes so that the people who are in the audience can arrive. I welcome everybody who is here for this League of Women Voters webinar. We're going to wait a few more minutes so that people can arrive. It's still not yet 6, so I'll at least wait until 6.
One thing I forgot to mention as logistics to you panelists is you do not need to pay any attention to the chat or the Q&A. Susan is going to be monitoring that. So even when things pop up, ignore it. We have 11 of the 85 attendees signing in now. So welcome to everyone.
Welcome. We will be starting in a few minutes to give more people a chance to arrive. Welcome to this webinar. We're a few minutes early or a minute or two early, so I'm just going to wait a few more minutes. We have a lot of people who have signed up to join us tonight. So we'll see how many of our, I think it's 85 people who signed up. We'll see how many of them show up.
Hopefully everyone has power.
That was what I was really worried about, because I know that Bremerton lost power. And so I wondered how many other people, and I lost power in Suquamish. So I am not sure how many people still are without power. I know my friends in Tracyton still do not have power. And so I'm glad that all of the panelists could show up. I don't know if all the audience can come, but at least all the panelists have been able to come. We welcome you to this League of Women Voters of Kitsap County webinar. We are very pleased to have you. I want to give the audience a few more minutes or a minute or two more to arrive, just so that you don't have to hear us in the middle of it. Welcome, Judy. Thank you, all of you in the audience, and I'm glad to have you here. We will be, I think I'll just give it another minute so that we don't have to have those who got here on time have to wait too long. And in addition, we have great panelists, and I don't want to waste their time either. But I'm very glad to have everybody coming to our League of Women Voters Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webinar to get to know the diverse communities in Kitsap County. My name is Susan Griggs, and I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI, Committee of the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters was founded over 100 years ago in the days of the women's suffrage movement. The League envisions a democracy where everyone has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. We are nonpartisan, but always working on vital issues of concern to members of the public. The League welcomes all genders, both men and women, to join. Embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion is core to the League's mission to empower voters and defend democracy. The League of Women Voters of Kitsap formed a DEI committee several years ago to engage more with diverse communities in Kitsap County and to sponsor both League member and community education programs about diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. Today's webinar interview is the fourth in a planned series of webinars. There are many racial and ethnic groups living and working in Kitsap County who experience racial discrimination in their daily lives or who are underserved by public institutions and businesses. The League is committed to helping all Kitsap residents have a voice in local government and to ensuring access for all residents to the public services that they need. In May of 2020, the League of Women Voters of the United States issued a statement speaking against racism. Part of that statement reads, as an organization whose mission is to empower voters and defend democracy, we stand in solidarity with all communities of color. The League shall do so not only by speaking out against racism in all forms, but by doing the work required of us to be anti-racist. We are committed to listening to and amplifying voices of people of color and educating ourselves and our children on the historic and ongoing systemic racism that plagues this country. The League acknowledges painfully that America is a nation founded on racism. Therefore, all who live in this country must contribute to and participate in organizations actively working to achieve full liberation and inclusive freedom. We must all advocate for anti-racist policies at every level of the government. This is a webinar. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. After the moderator has finished asking her questions, if there is time, I will ask as many of the questions from the chat as there's time for. We will be recording this webinar and it will be posted on the League of Women Voters of Kitsap YouTube channel. I welcome today 4 persons who can share information about the Latinx or the Hispanic community in Kitsap County. It is important to note that this community is very diverse, as the individuals or their ancestors come from any country in the world where a Romance language such as Spanish is spoken, whether the person is from Chile in southern South America, Mexico or Guatemala in Central America, Cuba in the Caribbean, or Spain in Europe. I would like first to introduce Ellen Kanapaski, who will be our moderator and will introduce our 4 panelists. And I will now leave, except I will be able to listen and monitor the chat. Have a good webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. I'd like to, I'm honored to be in this position and introduce 4 people from diverse backgrounds. First, I'm going to start. Can y'all see this? Oh, I don't see. Okay. Octavio Bojorquez, who is a teacher in the Bremerton School District teaching English language learners, ELL, who worked in Mexico for 10 years as an accountant before emigrating. We also have Juana, a high school student in Kitsap County. Next is Brenda Calderon, a Latinx first-generation immigrant who has been farming in small-scale sustainable agriculture and doing social and environmental justice work. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Carlos Mejia. He is a member of the Kitsap Immigration Assistance Center and a physician with Choice Regional Health Network in health equity and COVID-19 vaccination uptake in populations of color. And we're going to hopefully start with some questions, and hopefully it will become a conversation. Now, I have you all muted, so I'm hoping you're not saying anything. I do want to point out before we start that in August, the Census Bureau noted that there is a 54% increase in Hispanic people in our county. That is the largest growth, ethnic growth, and it's a timely subject here that these people are sharing about living in Kitsap County. Okay, we first would like, I gave a little bit of your background, but perhaps you could share a little more about your home country or your home heritage or your family background. Octavio, would you like to start? You did mention Mexico. Is that your home country?
Yes, I was born in Mexico, and all my family is in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And we are, I recently did the ancestry DNA test, and so I can say that I am Native American from Mexico, approximately 30 or 40%, and then there is some Spanish blood also, but I consider myself from Mexico, and now from the United States too.
Wonderful. Thank you. Brenda, could you explain a little bit about the background you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. So my parents were both born in Durango, Mexico, and it's like the northern part of Mexico, closer to the U.S. And yeah, I also recently did my DNA test, I guess in 2020.
Oh,
Really, a lot of that stuff. But yeah, and I grew up in LA, right? So in a really heavily populated, Latinx populated area. My town was pretty much 100% Latinx folks. So I got to grow up with people from different regions from Central America and Mexico.
wonderful. Dr. Mejia, can you share your ethnic background, please?
So I have not yet done my DNA, but I consider myself indigenous from Central America. I am originally from Honduras, from the north coast of Honduras, and there is a intersection between indigenous and some Black population that is called Garifuna. Mm-hmm. So I consider myself a mix, indigenous, with my family, some of them being originally from El Salvador, and the other part from Honduras. So the El Salvador part of my family have some Spanish blood. So I am a mix, but I consider myself, I think that I'll be close to Octavio with a large portion of my heritage being indigenous.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And Juana, what would you like to tell us about your background?
I was born in Soloma, Guatemala. And I came here when I was 9. So I kind of grew up here.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Okay. I feel like I've been reintroduced to you all. Adapting to a move of any kind is a huge effort. Perhaps you could talk about adding the differences between countries and the impact that that has had. Whether it was, like Brenda, you said, growing up here, but in a cultural neighbor area, there still are probably differences that you might speak to. As a matter of fact, maybe you can start being in a community of Latinx people.
Right. Yeah. So I don't come with the direct immigration experience because I'm in LA. But it is a really big difference. It's basically like a small Latin America because there's such a high population of everybody. Yeah, I had Cuban neighbors, Salvadorian neighbors, and it was just really enriching to have so many different cultures together. And I didn't really realize it at the time, right? Because it's normalized growing up. Also in such a large city, you just have more access to diversity in general and just different cultures overall. But yeah, it was really nice to just kind of be surrounded, like in the daily life, to be surrounded by those cultures, and then transitioning into living in more white cities or white areas, it definitely became a little bit more difficult. And that's when I realized how different it was, because I grew up in such a diverse area, and then also went to college in New Mexico, which is near the border in Las Cruces near Juarez. So there was a large population of immigrant folks there too. And so, yeah, it definitely was a pretty stark contrast where my language wasn't used on the daily, right? Like it was a lot less ubiquitous. And so it's kind of been a real conscious effort to just kind of keep the practice going with my language, and just kind of with Spanish, right, as my first language. But English is my primary. And so it really gets like there's a big imbalance in the way that it's used and the way that I feel, because there's parts of me that belong to those communities, to those Latinx communities, that aren't necessarily expressed in my daily life. And so when I'm in Kitsap County or in the communities that I work in and live in most of the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Octavio, you went from Mexico here to Kitsap County. What do you see as differences in that move, or things that were challenging?
I had the fortune of emigrating and coming up here to a comfortable life. I mean, I work as a construction worker. I did taxes, and then I finally landed a job with Bremerton School District, and I am so thankful with them, because it provided me the platform to really find a place in this community, and not and not feel like I didn't fit, because that's how I felt. And the experiences at the beginning were really hard, because I experienced quite a few times discrimination, or people followed me in big stores, for example, and I applied for different jobs, and two main experiences really made me think that I wasn't welcome when I applied for those two jobs, and I was overqualified actually, and I didn't get the jobs, and no explanation and no it was really hard. At the beginning, it was like everything was telling me like I wasn't welcome. And once I started working for Bremerton School District, it was like everything fell into place, and everything continues to fall into place. So I can say that one of the big differences that I found at the beginning was that people was really close. Kitsap residents, I live in Paulsville. I work in Bremerton. So Paulsville is a little bit more conservative than Bremerton, and people are more, they guard themselves more, and it's a little bit more difficult for them to open to diversity, because I am the only brown person in the community where I live. And that reflected really, really hard at the beginning. But now everybody knows me, everybody knows what I do. And it's just amazing how beautiful it is to be embraced by the American families, my neighbors, for example. And so it's been a transition from being really hard at the beginning to now feeling that I belong.
Good.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you. It's good to know all that. Dr. Mejia, what are your experiences moving from one country to another?
So with my story, I would like to say that migration and immigration has so many faces and many dimensions. So I could say that, you know, I have been part of the family separation at least twice in my life. Once, the first one is when my mother came to the United States when I was 8 years old. And the second one was when I came to United States in 2002, invited to support a free clinic in Shelbyville, Tennessee. So I was invited to help this free clinic to get the Guatemalan community into the clinic, as they were using the emergency room for anything. And there was a lot of distrust from the community to go to a free clinic. So the word free was like a kind of unusual for them. So, and the reason for them to invite me is because I went to medicine school in Guatemala, and I get ingrained into the Mayan community. You know, I did most of my clinics and social services in Mayan communities. So I, you know, I did a work for this board of the free clinic and the city of Shelbyville. So I was invited for the city to bring my family to United States, and I came in vacation, and basically they helped me to get a job, and they helped me to get H-1B visa for professionals, and you know, 6 months after I came, my family came. So, but I had still now have a broken English, so because it's not my first language, and you know, I learned really late. So could you imagine working? So I got a job as supervisor of a program to prevent child abuse and neglect. And the reason to hire me for that position, it was because they have 70 families, and none of the families were Latinos. So they want to, but they have a large Latin population, but not a family, you know, not a single family was in the program. So but basically, I have to visit English-speaking families in Shelbyville, Tennessee, and all these places where the KKK was founded. And you can imagine a Latino with broken English coming to the houses and tell them how to take care of their children. So, of course, a lot of discrimination everywhere. You know, just you go to the bank, and the clerk was, you know, laughing, smiling with everybody until it got my turn, and she was like shocked and serious and going around and let me wait in there for 5 minutes and come back. And so those hints of racism, discrimination that you, until I came here, I didn't think, you know, thinking about the American people that they were racist. But when you start experiencing this kind of thing, like people in my work telling me, you are not a doctor here. So even myself thinking, I am a doctor, I'll be a doctor, independently where I am at, or if I have a license or not. You know, I have the education, the training, so I cannot practice, but I have the knowledge, skills, and training for that. So, but this is the kind of racism that you experience, and you start to recognize where are you, you know, living. So I don't live in Kitsap County. I work in Kitsap County, and I support organization in Kitsap County. And one of the reasons for me to dedicate the time, for example, with Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center, is because even that I came with, I would say with some benefits into the United States, still I am an immigrant, and still I will be suffering the same kind of discrimination like everybody else. So, and I think that what I would like to bring into Kitsap County is that to recognize the richness of, you know, of the values of these communities coming to live in Kitsap County and in the United States.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That helps us all understand so much better. Juana, what perspective and what thoughts would you like to share as a high school student?
What Mr. Bojorquez said, it's like, it's shocking to know that an adult went through most of the things that a little girl went through. When I came here, it was like, on my first day of school, I was scared and all of that. I skipped school because I was scared there was no one that spoke Spanish and understood where I came from. Like, it was just a brown-skinned Hispanic girl in the whole American kids. And because I didn't have any friends on my first day of school, I didn't understood what people would tell me. I was scared, and I told my mom, like, I want to go back home and stuff. Once I went to middle school, I got taken advantage of for my skin color and from where I am from. And I got bullied most of the time there. And it's just like, you know, I found friends. I thought I was like, oh, I can speak English. I found a friend. She's American. But in reality, people take advantage of you for where you're from. Like, they don't deeply know who you are. They might know you, but in reality, it's just that they'll bully you and take advantage to, you know, get their enemies or something. And it's just, I thought I was being nice and, found the best friend, but I didn't at all. I would say that I love it here, but not as much as I love my home where I grew up, where I was born, where I have most of my friends where they love me for who I am, and because we're all the same and not from here. There is Hispanic, like all of us, but people aren't just like where you're from. You'll know, like you have a bond with the people you grew up with, and just meeting a stranger, you just can't like trust anyone in reality. And that's my experience. But Bremerton is something.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, I'm sorry for the people in the schools. I'm sorry that you were bullied. It's not good on any level. So, but thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Some of you have mentioned this next question, which is if you have experienced mentors or people who have welcomed you, and some of you have already mentioned that. Would anyone like to expound on that? Explain that a little more? Meaning here in Kitsap County, because that's where we live.
I can speak a little bit about my experience with the support and the mentors that I have found. I have a neighbor, and her son-in-law is also a teacher, and he actually teaches the same class that I teach in a different school district, but also a very diverse school district. So we were talking yesterday. I share a little bit of the struggles in the classroom, and he shared also his own struggles in the classroom. And he has been teaching for 25 or so years. And so it's so nice to find somebody so close that can be kind of a mentor in that sense. But also, I have found several mentors and overwhelming support in all through Kitsap. For instance, my two experiences on my two prior work jobs, doing taxes, for example, it was just amazing. My English it wasn't as good as it is now, and just learning about the tax code. And even though I went to college and I learned the Mexican tax code and I did work, it was really difficult to do it up here. And so the person that I work with was very supportive. And what to say of my supervisors and coworkers in the Bremerton School District. Since the moment of my job interview, I have only found overwhelming support with them. So there is a lot of greatness in a lot of the people that I have found in Kitsap County.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can speak to it a little bit. I pretty much, since I moved to Kitsap County, and I moved for farm work, but not traditional like farm work. It's smaller scale. So there's like a pretty strong community in our farm world, little small farm world. And then there's like the larger that connects to the organizing community, right? So people that are in Kitsap doing a lot of the racial equity work and justice work. And so I think for me, it's been really empowering to have a lot of folks who are constantly working on making the community more welcoming for everybody and fighting injustice constantly, right? And speaking up. yeah, because I feel like it's taken me time, right? Coming from like a place that's diverse and comfortable, and then being thrown into an element where I'm out of the norm, or there's like, yeah, where there's less diversity and more discrimination present. It's taken me a lot of work to like find my voice and to speak up more, and also it's easier to advocate for other people versus yourself sometimes, right? So I think it's been really empowering to just have a lot of like women of color in our community who are really just beautiful people that are, complex and struggling in their personal lives and just like working to get things together. But it's just really positive to see folks who are banding together and really taking a lot of time out of their personal lives to do this work. And so, I think that's been incredibly helpful for me in just like settling in and confronting the issues that I experience in different spaces.
Good. Thank you. Dr. Mejia?
So I would say that I have not find I wish, I found a mentor during my life in the United States. So I have been a lone rider. Even that I have a family that I have living in the United States for a long time. I basically, I don't know if that was because of my education, but I didn't really have somebody to come and, So what I did is I learned to create partnerships and collaborations and meaningful relationships. So and that became part of my work. So I used to work for a managed care organization, and my work was community engagement, creative partnership and collaboration. So that was a big part of my work in Kitsap County, is to bring and provide support and to community-based organizations, specifically to BIPOC organization that, and I also came to Kitsap County to provide trainings on moving from cultural competency to cultural humility in order to improve cross-cultural communication. So because of that, I wish I could have a mentor, but I didn't, but that helped me to focus on, so with this training on cultural humility, what I am trying to bring to the community that receive those trainings, that when it's related about culture, when it's related about cross-cultural communication, we need to be learners. We are not knowers. And the problem is that we see people, and what we see is we see attitude, we see behaviors, and then we define that people for those attitudes and behaviors. So we don't know who that person is. We just assume who that person is. So and probably with my own story, I can find that mentorship is a really great tool to support immigrant communities. But lucky the ones that have had that opportunity. But I think that this forum will be a good opportunity to invite the people that is listening and attending this forum to see for opportunities to mentor those, specifically the youth, the ones that are needing the most.
Yes, thank you very much. Juana, was there anyone, you spoke about middle school, you said it got a little better in middle school. was it the school, do you think? Were there teachers maybe, or maybe your family helped you mature or get through the difficult times? Was there someone who helped you that you can think of?
Yeah, two people. I don't know if you guys know Lydia Webb and Annika Turner
Mhm.
are the people who were there for me to fit in this community.
Good. For those who don't know, that's from the Kitsap Immigration Assistance Center, known more commonly as KIAC, and it's in East Bremerton, and is a strong outreach to the immigrant communities, which leads me to another question. Immigrant communities, you're each from a different area with different experiences. Could you speak to the interaction among different Latinx people who are here from other countries or whose heritage is based on a different culture? I'm afraid there's a tendency to say, oh, you're Latino, oh, you're Hispanic, therefore, you know, it's a group, a homogeneous group, and yet it isn't. Is there communication between Guatemalan, Mexican, Honduran, Los Angeles people? Or do you see your, excuse, Octavio, are you talking? You need to unmute. Oh, you're not. Okay. How much?
But I can.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I live in Paulsbo, so I know that Paulsbo has a lot of I am not comfortable using the term Latinx yet.
That's another question I
have. I think it disrupts the Spanish in its essence. Paulsbo has a lot of immigrants from Mexico, and Bremerton has a lot of immigrants from Guatemala, for example. And I know that just like it would happen here in the United States, some communities from the Northwest, for example, are not so comfortable, at least at the beginning, communicating or sharing with people from the South, for example. So the same happens with the Hispanic or immigrants from Latin America. Same language, but it's a little different dialects of Spanish. But what I've noticed as a teacher is that sometimes it's a little difficult for communities from Mexico, immigrants from Mexico, to communicate and have strong relationships with immigrants from Guatemala. I don't mean to say that they don't have communication. They do, but I've seen that in Paulsbo, for example, immigrants from Mexico stick together in a more cohesive way than they stick together with the Guatemalan community, for example. And what I've noticed also is that some immigrants from El Salvador, for example, or Honduras, in my own experience, tend to be closer to the Guatemalan community. And maybe I am mistaking on that perception, but that's my experience.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Brenda, you said earlier that you grew up with a diverse Latino, at that time it was Latino, community. Have you seen that in other places or here at all? Or what's your
Right. I think so. They're right. I think the main thing is like usually different groups from Latin America don't want to be, everyone kind of gets lump summed into being Mexican. So I know people always get severely offended by that. That's like a really big deal. And then I do remember growing up, right, there's different derogatory terms for people from different areas, from either like as immigrants coming to the US, depending on the way that you arrive. And so I remember growing up, there was some conflict in our community with whenever people would discriminate against other groups with derogatory terms. And even as a kid, I remember like feeling like, okay, that's a bit intense, like maybe we don't need to use these things to talk to each other. So I feel like there is a big separation that can happen when we're all kind of trying to classify each other, right? We're all trying to like fit into this class system that America creates. And so depending on whether you swam here or crossed or flew, right? It's a really big difference to people when they're trying to one up each other sometimes. So I feel like, not to say that everyone got along all the time. It definitely, I did see sides of it where the communities didn't come together, but in like my community specifically growing up, we all bonded pretty well. And and we're really helpful towards each other whenever we needed things. In Kitsap County, I haven't really been able to be in situations where it's like more than one group together. The times that I've been around Guatemalan population folks, it's like a group of Guatemalan folks that are, either at KIAC for a specific reason or I haven't seen any of the groups like interacting together. It's been kind of broken up into groups, which I feel like does naturally happen in general. Like when you see it in a larger scale in LA, you have different neighborhoods for different communities usually, right? So there's usually like a pocket of Mexican folks and a pocket of Salvadorian folks, and like Honduran, Cuban. So they kind of naturally gravitate towards each other.
Okay. Dr. Mejia, you were talking about how you are now mentoring, which I think is wonderful. And I can see that. Do you think this is an area where you're dealing with youth and community might expand?
Definitely. I would like first to follow on Octavio definition of Latinx. I would say that I don't like the term Latin because that is related to the language. So Latin could be a Portuguese, could be a Italian, could be a French. So we are all Latins and that was a term that was created with political purposes, like Hispanic is a term that was created for basically for the census in order to have no race but have ethnicity. So in the 60s, instead of so people Hispanic, instead of putting their own race there, they have to put race white and then sign for Hispanic or Latino. So we have been in there. So I don't like Hispanic either because it's from the colonialism. So I don't feel attached to that Hispanic term. So I consider myself again indigenous from Central America. When in this cultural training, when I say I am brown, some people, in the audience say there is no brown race, so they can tell you what is your color or what is your race. So I think that's a learning thing for us as define who really we are, and for the question on the relationship between people of different countries, I would say that Arredondo in 2004 made a research about human behavior. He established that there is 3 dimensions of human behavior. There is a universal dimension in which we all are the same. So we are the human race, or when you are from the United States, we are American. We are all Americans. So, and there is a cultural dimension in which, people get connected and share same values. And, I put the example of the motorcycle. So there is the Harvard Davidson, clubs, they got different names, but they are the Harvard Davidson. But there is the Honda motorcycles also that they are fans and they have clubs. So in this case, we are talking here about the Guatemalan community. They get together most of the time, a family came to Kitsap, then you will have more and more families coming to Kitsap. That's the cultural dimension. They will try to connect with people that it could be by national origin, it could be by language, it could be by, they go to the same store. So, or they go to the same church. And there is this individual dimension in which each individual is different. So I won't say, I want to take all the group and say, no, Guatemalan just connects with Guatemalans and Mexican just with Mexican. Even in Mexico, there are so many differences between the North, the center, and the South. I would think that, people from Guatemala that speak the Mayan language are more connected with the Chiapas people that speak also Mayan languages. So we cannot kind of generalize when it's related to relationship, because those are according to those dimensions of the human being. So I can kind of consider myself a connector. So, I really have a good relationship with people from Mexico all the way down to Argentina. And I have a good relationship with the Caribbean, people from the Caribbean and people from, just in here in the Garifuna population have their own culture in Honduras. And we are so different. They have their own languages, they have, their own music, they have their own traditions. But, and there is a lot of discrimination. So most of the time there is no relationship between them and, the indigenous. So for example, right now I have a, wonderful relationship with an organization that is the Garinau Hounga. This organization, they, are educating their children on opportunities. So I would say that for us, it's good to keep our tradition and to keep our folklore, our clothing, dancing, food. But also it's good for us to have that interconnectedness, because we are different, we are the same, we share stories, we share some traditions. So I think that communities through different means are trying over and over to get closer and closer. So I want to put the example of the soccer tournaments. You will see people of different, nationalities, and they are interacting and they are, learning from each other and communicating. So yes, there is cultural dimension that separate one group from another, but still the community try to be together as much as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you. Juana, have you made friends with people who are from other Spanish-speaking countries that perhaps help you feel like, you have some stronger friends by now?
Yes, I have some Mexican friends. They make me realize that Mexico and Guatemala isn't really different. For example, I think the only difference that Mexico and Guatemala is they don't have the same like clothes and language, but there is Spanish. It's kind of the same, but there are some words that people from Mexico say different. And but in reality, it's really not, because of the food. They have tamales, we have tamales. I don't really see any difference, Guatemala and Mexico, maybe from Honduras or the other one. I'm sorry, I don't know the other one. But we can't tell each other apart. There is people who are there are people, for example, like my mom, she doesn't really speak a lot of Spanish. She only went to school for like 2 years, but there are people who are expert in Spanish and kind of sound like people from Mexico. And people from Mexico have like an accent. And some Guatemalans do too. That's kind of the only difference, but I don't see the difference, a lot of difference.
So you feel you could be friends despite if there's intercommunication.
Yeah, there's a bigger connection between Guatemala and Mexico. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see. How about this is a different a different topic, but how do various organizations function? What are your experiences with perhaps government agencies, with schools, with the health system, churches? Do you have anything that stands out, either that have anything that has helped you or anything that has hindered you, that we should know about, or that you could shed some light on? Is that a clear question? Probably not. Just basically, what have your experiences been with social organizations, institutions? We may have covered some of this.
In my personal experience with social institutions, I can say that my dealings with, well, I have only one bad experience with social institutions, but for the most part, like going to any government office, for example, it's been really good. I don't recall experiencing any discrimination or racism. However, when I was getting my driver's license, and this is within the 3 months of having have been arrived here, I did have a big challenge. I had to go to Edmonds to get my driver's license, to get the documents approved and all that. And I can say that as a teacher, I have helped students get their driver's license. I have taught them or helped them study the booklet for their written test, and I have made phone calls to the offices to get them appointments, and every single time, all those experiences have been really good.
Okay.
Really good.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, well, I think that's often our experience with getting a license too. But sometimes you have to go to a different town to take your test. Dr. Mejia, quickly, I just looked at my watch. I'm so interested in what you all have to say, but we have just a few minutes, so maybe you could each just put a thumbs up or thumbs down on governments, institutions, societal institutions, your
So
view.
personally have been discriminated. So, but I will say something that is important. I will say that is critical to understand related to healthcare services.
Mhm.
That in our countries, independently if that is Mexico or all Central America, all the way down to South America, so there is no preventive, medicine. So there is no appointments. The children, they have vaccination, but they don't have, to come every year for a checkup, or for adults is non-existent. So when they come to United States and they have a headache, for them is they are sick, so they will use whatever is open. So there is not a real understanding how the system works.
Mm.
And that's, for the American people and the people that pay taxes, that should be something that, you should consider. How we can help this community understand how this system works. Well, I know, working for public health, I understand that even American people don't understand how the system works. Could you imagine then somebody that, this system, they don't have any hints on how it works. So and also there is a disconnection between the health system and education. So it's difficult for establish that connection between providers, medical providers, and schools. And we are in the midst of it. And I will say another thing that is affecting that you should consider on, what to do is on looking for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They put an interpreter in Spanish for people that, Spanish is not the first language. Just in Guatemala, there is 55 different Mayan languages.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring somebody that speak, Spanish as a second language, and then you put a Spanish translator. So what is the probability that, that negative outcome will come out to that, relationships?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we should look into have more people from the communities to be, receive more education, to become translator, to become interpreters, to become, part of the system.
Okay, thanks for that insight. I'm not sure, Susan, it's 8 o'clock on my computer. I hate to leave you out, Brenda and Juana. Can we talk a teeny bit more? You're
You
muted.
can talk some more, because we have had a lot of comments from the audience. They are very appreciative of what you're talking about. And I think that they also do not agree or do not like the term Latinx. And they also wanted to talk about how, they can tell people from different countries because they have a little bit of different words and different accents, and there's different cultures. So they very much resonate with what you're saying. But you can keep on talking, because we don't have any questions. The audience can put in some questions, but in the meantime, we can have this conversation go on, because I think everybody's appreciative of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Brenda, your work with social justice, does that include institutions, government, healthcare, school? I know you're on the farm, but I'm sure you have to get licenses and permits, and I would think.
Yeah, I think from like an earlier age, I definitely had to like navigate a lot of the communication with institutions for my parents because
Mm,
their second language, and my mom had a pretty heavy accent, and so people tend to not want like have the patience to listen to somebody who has an accent. So I was always kind of put in the role of like making phone calls to, you know, whatever situation she needed to figure out or anything. And I feel like, yeah, that was definitely challenging, just like seeing it as a kid, right? And in the process of learning English, and then like actually being more proficient because it's easier for me to understand it and stuff. So I feel like there was definitely some negative experiences from the beginning. I feel like the public education and academia definitely failed in really big ways, just largely centering your white and European perspectives, right, in our education. And so I really regret that I have a really deep understanding of European history, but not not my personal history or the role of like Chicano folks in the US and other Black and Indigenous people in our country. So yeah, I definitely feel really let down by that. Also, yeah, I mean, when it comes to progress, like real progress, it feels like it can't move fast enough. And so a lot of these institutions just are really hesitant and really set in their ways. And so it's really frustrating just to try to push them along and not see any progress in pretty much every aspect of our society.
mm. Yeah, there was a parallel history going on the West Coast as there was on the East, but it's not always explained that way in history. Juana, you're in school. Does school? How about do you get to health clinics and whatnot? I don't want to make that a personal question, but your world is pretty much school right now. But how do you feel about other things? Do you have social groups that you can go to? Are they perhaps like the YMCA, or I'm thinking of Bremerton? I don't know where you are. Churches, do you have any organizations in your life or that you've explored or would like to, or your friends?
Yeah, the only thing that I had, I had is school, and I used to work, but I'm out of that, and the only thing I have left is Girl Scouts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
yeah, that's the only thing.
that's fine. I know you probably, I don't want to ask anything that would be too personal, but it's probably not like paying bills and having to go to offices. And not
No.
yet, not yet. Okay. Is there anything any of you would like to explain or say about Kitsap County in general, or what, say anything to either one of the other people here and the panelists, or
I would like to take an opportunity to build a little bit on Dr. Mejia's comment about the health system. In my experience as a teacher, I am an advocate for my students for so many different things. And I have had experience navigating a little bit the medical system and making appointments or trying to find a way to pay bills or for students. And I can say that the medical care that our high school age immigrants have is really good. They do get the care that they need, but there is not much preventive, as Dr. Mejia said. And I would like to point out that once students turn 18, basically the medical care goes away. And then I can also say, because of my own experience with my students' parents or guardians, that they don't have medical care, and they are sometimes so afraid to go to the doctor that they just weather out the situation. I had a parent that broke a bone, for example, and she did not go to see the doctor. That's just only one experience of many. Another thing that I would like to point out about Bremerton in this case is that the housing, it's a big issue for our immigrant communities. It's really expensive on one side, and on the other side, everything is done electronically now. And I know that our immigrant Hispanic community, at least from Bremerton, in most cases they don't have the skills to do that. And another issue that I have found is that all property owners are asking for social security numbers, and we know very well that in some cases our immigrant community does not have a social security number, and so they have to end up living all cramped together in small apartments or small houses, and it's just not conducive. And I wish we in Kitsap County we could have an official government office to welcome immigrants and like help them, teach them how to navigate the basics of how the system works in here. And then I also wish that we could have another KIAC in Kitsap County, because what they do is just amazing. And I know that there are a lot of immigrants that are not getting the services that they need, not getting the legal services, for example. Kitsap does an amazing job, but there is not enough people, there is not enough time to help all our immigrants with their legal needs, that they end up going to King or Pierce County. And we know that there are so many bad lawyers that take advantage of our immigrants. And so it's like, I wish that our county could have the capacity to provide all those services in Kitsap County, like having a pool of lawyers, for example. How wonderful that would be.
I hope someone out there is listening. Susan,
Since I mentioned that about questions, we have gotten some questions in, so I can ask some questions. One person was saying, it seems like we could do a better job at providing information in multiple languages. And do you feel that it's not enough residents speak Spanish or speak any of the other languages, or just not enough volunteers, or just not enough thought going into being inclusive?
I can speak to that really quick. I feel like it's mostly there's not enough people to do the translating work, right? Like, or there's like not access to folks who have different languages. Like if we could get some of the Guatemalan dialects in, and not just Spanish, right? That would be really great. And because I feel like there is a need, and it would make so many more things accessible to folks, that having those translations done would be really great if there was a way to reach out to more folks to do them and have them readily available.
Yeah, I know I've heard that parents have gone to the schools and, they're expected, because they appear to be Hispanic or Latinx or from a Spanish-speaking country, they're expected to understand when the translator talks in Spanish. And this is just as foreign to them as if the person talked in English. So we need those. We had a comment that I'm sure Octavio's students are very happy to have him. And then it was Juana, I know you've struggled with having friends your age that speak Spanish. Have you had teachers that speak Spanish and have been able to help you navigate the school system?
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna speak on the first question and about translating. From my experience as being a teenager and speaking 3 languages, I see that not many people are translator of Canjopal, which is a language in Guatemala. And I know some of you, if there's Hispanic on, you guys might know that there is kids out there or teenagers that are that translator for the parents, because not every parents know English or Spanish, for example. And I know the struggle of having to really translate things, or like immigration papers and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just that one is really a problem here. And the second question is, yes, I do have a wonderful teacher. Mr. Bojorquez is actually my ELL support teacher. He's really nice, and I love being in his class.
Oh, well, that's good.
Small world. Yes, there is a burden on young people who often lose school time to go with parents so that they can translate at the bank, at medical appointments, and it's often subject matter that is beyond. Not you, Juana. You're older now, but I've seen 10-year-old kids trying to translate in a doctor's office, and the vocabulary just isn't there. And for the child is what I'm saying. It's a burden on the child, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to provide and be sure that people can get the care and in all levels of society that they need. I agree.
There was also a question, how would you retain your heritage trying to assimilate into American society without losing your identity?
Ooh.
That's a
great
challenging
question.
one.
That's the question of the $1 million reward. Whoever finds the answer will get it. I know that we tend to have 2 worlds. The world where we work or study, and the world of our homes. So I know my students, they follow the American culture at school. They do school here in America, and then they speak English with their peers. Sometimes they only get along with their small group of friends from either the same country or who speak Spanish or their other language, in the case of the students that speak Mam, for example, or Canjobal or Quiche or any of the multiple languages. And then they go home, and then it's like shutting out the American life and is everything in their first language, and music or TV and customs and all traditions. And so it's almost like that is the norm for us immigrants, having two worlds and just learning how to juggle between those two worlds in order for us to keep our traditions and our language and our culture.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Octavio, because there's a Chicana writer, Gloria Ansaldúa, who talks about that, and there's a term called that she uses that's Nepantla, which is like a Nahuatl word, and that's exactly what it means, is being between two worlds, right? And so she was actually in the borderlands of like El Paso, and so yeah, so it's like really that is the experience. And even as like a child of an immigrant, like as an immigrant, you come from a place and you know where you're from, and then as the child of that immigrant, you don't know that place, and so it's even more detached, I feel like. And so a lot of my journey has been kind of reconnecting to that, and just kind of seeing where I fit in that, because it is really difficult to navigate a space and have an identity when you don't like really know about your heritage, or you don't know you don't have lived experience of that heritage and where it comes from. And so I feel like that's really been challenging, and I'm 30 right now, 31, so still going through that, and still barely really kind of sitting with it. And just the question of like, oh, where is my home? And that's a very simple question that feels pretty heavy, because I don't have a clear answer. Like, my home is where I live, but like, yeah, where is like my home of my ancestors? And that's why that kind of pushed me to get a DNA test and try to like find more of my origin story, because that hasn't necessarily been a priority for my family to keep track of things like that. So or they haven't, maybe didn't have time. But yeah, it's very difficult to maintain that identity and connect to it. And especially with, right, so much colonization. And Spanish is not even our original, right? That's our colonized language in our home country. And then English is the secondary colonizing language. So there's like so many layers to unpack in between that. But yeah, pretty complicated.
We have a lot of people who've given comments, and there are a few people who say they'd be glad to volunteer and be translators or help mentor or that kind of thing. And somebody who gave recommendations of books. So there's a lot in the chat that I cannot take. I don't want to take the time and read the whole thing, but there's a lot of support for all of you in appreciating what you've done. There is a question: do young Spanish-speaking immigrants that want to stay in Kitsap County, or do they want to go elsewhere because there's just not enough here for them? Do they see economic opportunities here?
The experience that I have with young people at school has taught me that young people do want to stay in Kitsap County, but it sometimes is hard to find job opportunities. And as all of you know, one of the big areas that immigrants work in is landscaping, but also brush picking and restaurants, and also for example, Gig Harbor is a place where a lot of our young immigrants go to work. And In the case of Bremerton, for example, I have had experience of quite a few students that have shared with me that they have been taking advantage in the job. Money that they earned that never was paid, for example. Not good separation from their jobs, not fair separation from their jobs, and very, very low wages, for example. And so when we add those things up, in many cases, it ended up being better for our young people to go out of the county to find job opportunities.
Well, we've got about 8 minutes by my clock. And I'm thinking that it would be nice to give each of our panelists some time to just say whatever they think is important to share, because you've given the audience a lot of good information and they really appreciate this. There's one person who said, I'm so glad it's being recorded so I can listen to it again and share it with other people. So you've said some wonderful things. So, if you can have a comment as to, possibly what you would like those listening to know. And we have a lot of people from the League of Women Voters. If you have some suggestions as to issues that we should tackle, I've tried to write down some of the things that you've mentioned, but maybe you can share a little bit more, each of you. So you've got about 2 minutes each person.
Okay, Carlos, you haven't talked for a few minutes. Excuse me, Dr. Mejia.
It's okay, I'm Carlos. So I would like to, so when as I came to Shelbyville, Tennessee, I started working with the mayor and with other Latino leaders, trying to find a way for the Latino community to be integrated into the American society without changing their culture. So we founded the Centro Latino, an organization that was under the city, and we founded the Bedford Bridges that was for youth. So, and the idea behind it was that we're gonna put the police, we wanna put the law enforcement, we wanna put social services to come in front of the community and speak to the community, their work, and why they have to trust in government, why they have to trust in institutions. So we have this, kind of focus group where, we have presenters. So, and later on, we have a large Islamic community from Somalia coming, for the chicken factory in that city. So, and we started working with the Somalian community because that was huge impact for the white and African-American population in that city. And we, merged the Latino community and the Somalian community, working together, keeping their tradition, their religion, and basically integrating into the American society, and be respectful of the law, and at the same time learn, how the system works. So even that was successful. Even that there is a documentary. The name is "Welcome to Shelbyville" in NPR. So and you can, I will invite you to go and see that approach. That for me, you have in the Kitsap Immigrant Assistance Center. So I think that a good idea will be provide more funding prior to the city or institution or organization. The work is being done, but there is more resources needed. And I think that the kind of services that they are offering, not just for the Latino community, but for all immigrant and refugee communities, it is really meaningful. And I think that we need to support the ones that are doing the work.
Thank you. I'm going to interrupt you there. It's wonderful. That's a huge springboard. Brenda, we're down to about 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick so that Juana can have some time. Yeah, I feel like definitely piggybacking on what everyone is saying here. Just like uniting resources. I'm part of a group called KIAC, Kitsap Advocating for Immigrant Rights and Equality, and it's just a grassroots group that is not a nonprofit, nothing like that. Just volunteer folks that is mostly focused being immigrant led and for immigrants, right? And so we're currently looking for folks who are immigrants that want to be a part of this group, and a lot of it is just for advocacy. Like you said, I think I'd really like to connect with all of you after this for the panelist folks, just to kind of relay some information or get some of the information of people that you know in your community, like Octavio, that you were talking about, some of your students that were treated unfairly at work. And those are all issues that CARE would like to focus on, and not so much on the service end like KIAC, but more on like the focusing on helping create like equity in the community and hopefully policy changes that will help immigrants integrate into our community without as many challenges.
Wonderful. Thank you. Juana, we're going to give you the last word.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is to the Americans that are here, if you have like a teenager or something, a little kid growing up, just educate them to not make fun of a Hispanic person, because they don't know the struggle of what a Hispanic person went through from crossing the border. Because from most of the people, they think it is easy to cross the border, but once you face it, it's not as easy as it looks like, because people tend to lose their mind or forget about their things while crossing the border. When I crossed the border with my mom, there were other mothers that were with us, and the kids had to go in first. They lowered down the babies, and the mothers had to jump off of like at the top, and a mother almost landed on her baby. And my mom forgot that I was there, and she left me alone there. And I had to think if she's gonna leave me there or if I follow her. And my mom cut herself when she was sliding down this pole, and for some reason it had some sharp things. And that's what I want to say, to educate your kids and to never judge anyone of a color because they don't know their struggle or what they went through.
Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure the rest of the people listening to you. Are we?
Well, it's 7:30, so I think, it's to be fair to all of you who I just promised that you had to come on here for an hour and a half. We want to thank you for your time tonight and all the comments that you had. This was excellent. It was a very good opportunity to get some perspective and to learn all the things you've been through, Juana, all the difficulties, all the obstacles that are in the way of the immigrants. And hopefully we can take some of the suggestions that you've made and try to see how we can go forward, either in Kitsap advocating for immigrant rights and equality, or in the League of Women Voters, or anybody else who is listening. And I welcome all of you audience people who suggested that you would be helpful you would be willing to translate, please look out for where you can do that, because school systems need translators. KIAC needs more people helping there. And we really need to have more resources. I'm not sure if anybody here speaks any of the Mayan or the Guatemalan or the Honduran immigrant languages, but it would be nice if we had those as well. But it's very important that everybody realize how diverse a community the people from the different countries that speak Spanish and other languages as well, how diverse they are. So we thank you all for your contribution tonight, and we thank the audience for coming. Good night and have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Brenda and Octavio and Juana and Dr. Mejia or Carlos for coming, because we really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
And we would like to go and see Welcome to Shelbyville and see if we can, there's a Kitsap Equity, Race and Community Engagement, and they're trying to get all of the jurisdictions, all of the cities to be more welcoming. And so we can try to see if they can watch that and see what else we can do to try to get all the different areas in Kitsap County to be more welcoming. Thank you all. Good night.